All right, Kevin Smith, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Daniel.
Kevin, you are CMO, Chief Marketing Officer at Rollins. So you told me you are at Rollins for 18 years now. Is that true?
That's correct. Yeah. Hard to believe.
Hard to believe, really. Prior to us recording, you said, which I found really funny, your marketing career is probably one of the most exciting ones because you have been in a time when marketing went from yellow pages and TV and radio to something very, different in nowadays with Gen Z, etc. So how does it feel having experienced that transformation?
So mostly I think it's been fun because it's kept you on a constant stage where you had to continue to learn. Mm-hmm. And I will admit I wasn't the best student ever, but once I started working, I became a really good student. I was very curious about why people did what they did. And it made me more curious as new platforms came around, and we're constantly trying new things. So it makes our jobs more interesting to have more. I think about when we first started experimenting with the internet in the late 80s and the early 90s. It's back when you were dialing up on the internet and people didn't even know what they were doing with it. And now it's, it's a way of life. You're accessing it on your phone. I think 70% of our inbound traffic for residential comes from phones now. So that's a huge difference, especially if I think back to when I started in marketing. We basically had 3 television channels in the US, ABC, NBC, and CBS. And that's where all the advertising was.
Unbelievable. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Rollins family or the business basically also has a background in television. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they had a broadcast business prior to buying in 1964. And they used that business to leverage up so they could buy the Orkin business. So there's a lot of interconnectivity here.
It is, yeah. And you're based in Atlanta where you guys also have a studio, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah, we have a studio we use mostly for training our teams because training is critical. Being able to deliver the service that we want to deliver to our customers every day takes a lot of work, and making sure our team has the best tools and the best training and understand what it takes to solve their customer problems is critical to the success of all of our brands.
Mm-hmm. Speaking about customer problems, you said earlier that the technician is one of the keys to resell your service and keep, a big challenge to keep, basically leveraging the technician on the ground and in the field to help you grow. How do you manage that, and why is it such a big challenge?
Well, to me, marketing plays a pretty small role in this. We access demand, but then we're selling something that is really challenging. We're selling a concept. We're selling the absence of insects and rodents. Mm-hmm. We're selling the notion that we can protect your home from damage from termites. Mm-hmm. But most of the time, that customer can't see them. So the person that delivers our brands every day are our service technicians. Mm-hmm. And they create the relationships with the customer. They're communicating with the customer. They're solving the problem for the customer. So we're only as good as the experience that consumer has with our technician every day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And how do you said you have a little private focus group, your children, who are obviously at Gen Y, Z. I think
Gen Y, yeah.
Yeah. So if you talk about them and the transition of your work, going from yellow pages and TV to now social media platforms, Google search, advertising, what do they think about what their dad does, and what do you think is gaining more and more importance within our role as marketers for our businesses?
Well, clearly the world's moving from traditional terrestrial television to digital. Mm-hmm. And, so if I look at my 2 daughters, both at one point had totally cut the cord and weren't even on cable. So to find them was a challenge. Well, they're not unusual. What we find is it's hard to find a lot of this next generation, especially the millennial generation, where are they? They're buying homes later than they did? What are they spending their money on? How do we get in front of them and create salience about our industry and our brands? So that's a different challenge, and a lot of that comes from content. A lot of that comes from the sharing that they do. Whether it's a quick photo on Instagram of a bug, or I actually have children that still use Facebook. I think it's mostly for old people now, but I think they're still on Facebook. So we have to look at lots of different things in order to go find our customers.
So how does your day as a CMO of Rollins look like? Like a bit of it. Is it very granular and looking at all the data and figures? Let's say you get so much traffic from Instagram and so much traffic from Google. You can convert these and figures into new customers. Are you looking at CRM data? How does your job look like for somebody that all the viewers that mostly are working at more small or medium-sized pest control businesses? Sure.
So, I think, I think there's three kinds of marketers out there, and this will probably help you a little bit. I think there are surfers, there are snorkelers, and there are scuba divers. And I like to think of myself as a snorkeler. So I can be going along the surface, I can pick my head up and look around at what's going on. And then every now and then I've got to take a breath and do a deep dive and go down into the kelp and the seaweed and figure out what's going on. So I'll look at the data. So one of the first things I do every morning is look at the sales data. So how did we do yesterday? What's going on? Once a month, I'll look at performance data. So we'll look at how we're doing by channel. So I think it's really critical that we look at what's our cost of acquisition? Is that making sense? Is that viable? You can really get in trouble in a hurry if you're bidding on AdWords at Google and thinking, oh, I'm just going to spend. If that customer has one service with you and you spent hundreds of dollars to get that customer on board,
absolutely,
that's not a very economic proposition. So one of the things that we are always trying to figure out is, where is that ideal customer? How do we touch that ideal customer? And how do we pay a reasonable amount to convince that customer that they should be one of our customers?
Mm-hmm. So basically the two figures that are probably very, very important for you are the cost of acquisition for a customer, for a new customer, and the customer lifetime value, CLV, thinking about how long a customer is, hopefully with a retention rate, paying Rollins for the service, let's say termites, where they have an inspection, let's say every year or two or three times a year, whatnot. But other customers probably just have, a cockroach or a mouse or rat job once. So this is also, I think, a challenging problem we have at pest control, right? Because a lot of our work is based on an underlying event, whereas we wish that we can transform it towards something with a retention rate. Isn't that true?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say you don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, I've got to call a pest control company today because I really want to have pest control service. No, likely you walked into your kitchen and you see an ant trail walking across your countertop into your pantry. And that's what creates a problem. Or depending if you're very scared of pests and you see a cockroach walking across the floor, that's gonna create an event. And so the majority of people call a pest control company because they want to solve the immediate problem they have. So they're thinking, oh, just like a plumber, if I have a leak, I can go fix the leak. If my light doesn't work, I can call an electrician. If I have a pest problem, I can call a pest control company. But the difference is, in pest control, we're not dealing with an inanimate object. We're dealing with living, growing things, which require really a much more prescribed treatment over time. And most people don't wake up and say, hey, I'd like to have a long-term relationship with a pest control company. It's up to us to convince them. So it's back to that technician selling the importance of what we do every day when we're on site at their home or business.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. But you also tell a lot of stories, right? I mean, there's video, there's still text. You probably also have a podcast or something. So I think as it is mainly based, so the first touch point of a customer is most of the times caused by an event. Let's say I see an ant trail, or I have a food business and I need certification, I need a pest controller. So I have an event. This is why you probably, first of all, you have a great brand and you are well known, and especially the States, you're probably the #1 brand there. But how do you, when it comes to internet traffic, let's say Google search engine optimization or advertising, what would you think is the go-to thing that Orkin or Rollins gets most traffic from, or most customers from?
So, unfortunately, we've got, let me choose my words carefully here, because I don't want to offend Google, but they control a large part of the market. Oh, and yeah. I think it's really important that you understand how to optimize your value with Google. So if I were a small company, I'd want to know, where should I spend? How much should I spend? Where am I getting value? How do I make my brand more relevant in Google's eyes? And so a lot of that is building content, is building relevancy. So we spend a lot of time doing that. It's making sure that you've got landing pages that are working correctly and optimized. So there's lots of things you can do to get the most value out of your buck. So when you get a click, you want to do the best job you can on conversion. So spending time on conversion is really important for all of us. And the better experience the customer has, regardless of brand. So as an industry, we compete with all other service industries. And we're all competing for share of wallet. So frankly, if I don't get the business, I want someone else to get the business and give the customer a great experience so they want to stay in the category.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, makes sense. Yeah, but I fully agree with you. In today's world of digital marketing, a lot of the channels require that we pay for them. Whereas we obviously want owned content or owned platforms where basically people remember the Rollins brand and go to the Rollins website and search their a library for a blog on how to, how could I get rid of my termites, or how can I best prevent them. But I guess it's really hard to get people, but it's all about telling stories, I guess, but getting people off the big search platforms like Google, etc., towards your own content is probably the challenge of this decade, right?
Sure. And it's kind of an interesting relationship that we have between search engine optimization, where we're getting lots of content and we're trying to figure out how to push our brands up the funnel a little bit, as it were, on Google. So maybe you'll show up after one of their 77 ads. So you're
that's so true. Yeah.
Hoping to do whatever you can do there. So I think that we're always trying to create opportunity for the customer to think about us in a different way. So we've done series of videos that are, I'll call them a little humorous, that hopefully at the end you say, well, maybe that looks a little harder than I think. Maybe I better call Orkin, or maybe I better call Northwest. And so I think a lot of what we're doing is trying to share with that customer who may think they want to do it themselves, and That's then really say, clever. You know what, I can paint a room easier than I can get rid of a termite or a cockroach. So I'm going to call Western, or I'm going to call Clark to make sure that I do it right.
Yeah, it's basically a lot about value calculation too, right? But yeah, I guess it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Listen, I have another one. I have seen at Amazon.com. They also offer services, and they also offer pest control services. So you can actually buy a pest control service at Amazon.com, which is crazy, isn't it? Because I think over 50% of the search arrives or begins at Amazon. So how does that work? And could you basically just create an account at Amazon and get most of their traffic there? Or is that something that is still underestimated? What do you think about that?
So I think that Amazon could be a particular challenge for the industry, because they're going to take, they're going to require that we pay them in some manner, shape, or form. And my guess in looking at this over time is they want to pay them more than we want to pay them.
Absolutely.
And frankly, I'd rather figure out, how do we pay less to acquire a customer so maybe I can pay my technician a little more? or maybe I can have a better commission for someone. And so sending dollars to another channel is the last thing I would like to do. If we could live off of customer referrals, fantastic, and I wouldn't have to pay Google or Amazon or anyone else. That would be the ultimate. But unfortunately, a lot of people, they're looking at brands, they're looking at big brands, and where do they find them? They go to the internet, they do a search. Hey Siri,
Absolutely.
Where's the pest control company near me? Oh, Siri just talked to me. Bye, Siri.
So a couple of other questions. Brand building, employer branding is something that I think you also are responsible for. How do you create a brand around your company? I mean, do you have a podcast? Do you do a lot of YouTube interviews with your staff? Do you rely a lot of on your reputation, or what do you do it? How do you do it?
So, so employment branding is kind of new for us. I think that, we've started on LinkedIn, we're keeping an eye on reputation from Glassdoor. Our human resource team is really looking hard at those areas, and we're starting to partner with them from a marketing perspective. I think one of the most important things we can do is attract great people to our industry. And so collectively, and I think we're going to do some of this as an industry. We would love to figure out a way to explain what a great career you can have in pest control. So to me, so somebody who bounced around at a bunch of different companies and ended up in the pest control business, I think it's a pretty good career. I mean, I like the idea that we're doing something that can help people. And that makes me feel really good about getting up in the morning, knowing I'm solving a customer issue or a customer problem versus selling them a widget that they don't need.
Absolutely. Yeah. Making some profit around a product that, isn't really sustainable or whatnot. I think we really solve problems, and this is something we all as an industry can be proud of. About. And this is actually why we started this podcast, by the way, because we are so passionate about our industry. Last but not least, there are a lot of SME, small, medium-sized enterprises, self-employed pest control people watching this podcast or this YouTube video. Kevin, what would you think is the go-to thing for the next decade that these people, especially with a very tiny budget or a smaller budget, should look into to help their business grow a bit?
So, I'll give away a secret here, but I think you have to align with the next generation of users. So how do I get my brand relevant for the people who are going to be buying homes soon? And I think that's important. Buying behavior is changing a lot, and a lot of the, I'll call them media companies for lack of a better word, but Netflix, Apple Plus, Disney Plus, they're teaching the consumer to buy differently because they offer trials to their business.
That's true.
And I think they could be training this next generation. You should expect a trial. So as a pest control company, that's kind of challenging for us because we want recurring revenue. We want you to be, we're really not into this trial idea. So, I think our challenge is, how do we make ourselves relevant? And, oh, by the way, how do we explain that we're really not a one-time event? How do we convince our customers that this is something like you cut your lawn every week or every other week? This is a maintenance thing that you want to do to protect your home, your family, and your property. And it is an ongoing, just part of adult. It's like buying insurance,
Yeah, right.
I'm an adult when you buy life insurance when you have a family. Maybe you become an adult when you buy pest control service.
That's a really good secret. And I think, obviously it was with a wink of an eye, but I think honestly, also for the big companies, this is the key challenge for the next decade because shopping experience, buying experience, owning experience totally changed. I think with recurring revenue being one of the challenges we want to have as a pest control business, looking at the sales and figures of a business, the thing that we're targeting is probably, with a trial phase is something, it's probably the B2B customers, the enterprises, the bakeries, etc. That we could maybe allow 1 or 2 services cost-free if they sign a 2, 3, 4-year contract. Could be looked into. Definitely interesting. Thank you for that, Kevin. Really interesting discussion. I think a lot of value for the people watching. Been great fun.
Great. It's been great talking with you, Daniel. I've enjoyed it.
You too, Kevin. Thanks so much.